Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and since 2010, I've run the Songwriters on Process website, where you can find more than 200 conversations with songwriters about the creative process. I'm not here to talk about tour stories, band drama, how a band got its name, or favorite foods. My goal is to treat songwriters as writers, plain and simple. This is an intelligent conversation about the writing process between two writers. And today's interview is with John McCauley and Ian O'Neill of Deertick. I loved this interview. I love it when songwriters are specific with the things they need, the places they need to be with their process. I love all the interviews, don't get me wrong, but I love it when they say, yes, I need this thing. I have to be here. And these guys know what they need. They know what they want. They know what they need to be. There's no, whatever. I'll write anywhere. I can do anything. For example, McCauley said he needs, and he showed it to me, he's got this little blue notebook that he carries around, and it's got to be a number 2 Ticonderoga, I think, pencil. He likes to write on the floor. Britt Daniel of Spoon told me that about a year ago, too. And he gets a lot of ideas through turn signals. He does not listen to music when he's driving, but he finds that turn signals are a great source of inspiration. I've heard that, too. And he said he gets a lot of ideas in the laundry room. Hey, listen, we all got to do laundry. And for O'Neill likes the kitchen. It's a great energy source. I loved this response. The kitchen is the energy source for the house. And so the kitchen is the place where he feeds off that energy, even if no one's there. But he doesn't sit down. He stands up when he's in the kitchen. He says, again, that's his main energy source. Both of these guys are gym rats. They get a lot of ideas. I think O'Neill said that. I know O'Neill said he's a big runner, and McCauley rides the recumbent bike for 30 minutes, and they get a lot of ideas there. And we finished talking a lot about reading. These guys, both of them are voracious readers. I'd love to talk about that with them as well. So again, I really enjoyed this. Listening to, they're great songwriters. Deertick's a great band, and these guys are great songwriters, but I really enjoyed the specificity of the process. So check it out. Here is my interview with John McCauley and Ian O'Neill of Deertick. Ian, since you're the big one on my screen, first, I'll start with you. Are you an everyday type of writer, or do you feel like it's important? Is it important to write every day or create in some fashion, or are you just I'd rather write when the mood strike and not force it kind of person?
Maybe I benefit from writing every day, but it's tough to do that when you're a parent too. So I try to sneak it in whenever I can, and then just kind of build up as many ideas as I can possibly store. And then when I really have some time away from the family or from the kids, I can really dig into the demos and start to really refine something.
So we have 4 kids, and so I know what that is like. And do you find, though, that and I've had this conversation with songwriters who are parents, and I interviewed one recently who said, I think it was Shayna Cleveland, who told me that that all the time in the world is the worst thing to have, because when there's no timeline, no discipline, like I found that having a parent, you have those small windows, right? And pre kids, it was like you can lay around, but like you were saying, when you have kids, it's harder. But do you find that in some way that makes that, like, if you have an hour to write, when you know you only have an hour, do you get more done than if I said, oh, write for an hour, but there's no reason to stop after an hour, if that makes sense?
Definitely. No, absolutely. I found that when I actually do have the house to myself, like the lived experience of being a parent and the lived experience of not having any free time, really lends itself to, I think, making better work. I don't know. It feels like I have like a lot of reserves, and then they get to a lot of reserved experience that I get to put into the songs in really short periods of time.
Yeah. John, how about you? Are you a write every day kind of person, or just kind of like, no, I'd rather not force it thing?
I have no discipline.
Not at all.
Whatsoever, no.
And
I'm just kidding. I carry around a little notebook like this, a tiny spiral notebook, a little pencil snapped in half. And I'll just write little things as they come to me, put them together later, like a puzzle.
So are you, well, actually I was going to ask you this later, but we'll do it now. I do find that songwriters are incredibly particular about type of notebook, or even like if it is a pen, like color of ink. Are you a pen or a pencil person? We'll start with that, because I could do a whole website dedicated to just that part of the process.
Yes.
Ticonderoga #2 pencils.
See?
I was just in New York Magazine talking about these pencils. So
Oh, you were? Okay, perfect. And so is it?
I'm just
is
trying
it,
to get a pallet shipped to my house. That's what I'm trying.
Yeah. So is it? Do you find that the because on the other hand, I've heard people say pens are better because if you cross it out, you can still see it if you need it later. But do you, when you use pencil, are you erasing things?
No, I still cross it out.
Yeah,
That's so interesting. What's that, Ian?
I said that's smart, not to erase anything.
Yeah.
Just let the process be on the page.
Right. I mean, I kind of hear both things. I mean, from people who, pen or pencil or computer or anything like that. Yeah, it's funny because I just interviewed Josh Ritter and he said that it's all on his phone. He said, I know people like to think that I write with a quill pen, but he said, it's all on my phone, not even my computer. He's like, that's the reality of it. So John, one more thing then, does the notepad matter?
No, I kind of I go through big notebooks when I'm trying to compile my notes from the little guy, but the little guy, no, whatever, is cheap at CVS or something.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ian. Yeah.
I found that when I was younger and kind of, I don't know, more romantic, I would like need the moleskin notebook. But then found like I got less done. The fancier stuff I had, treating it with such preciousness is, I think it's not very productive. Gets in the way of the actual writing.
And I'm curious how both of you feel about this, because you bring a good point, and I've heard that before, that that some songwriters make it deliberately not precious, so they will go out of their way not to do that and write on like the back of utility bills or envelopes. Yeah, but do you do that? Is it because that's all I can find, or is it I want to make this as less precious as possible?
It's because me and my wife have a pretty disorganized house, and sometimes I can't find paper. And so, but when a really interesting line strikes you and you're like, I haven't thought that way before, then however you get it down is all that's important to me,
And again, another story. I interviewed Adam Granduciel from the War on Drug. This was like 10 or 11 years ago, I think, back when they were playing super, super small places. And he said that he writes on utility bills, but he has to fish them out of the trash because his partner at that time would always throw them away, not realize he had stuff on there.
My wife's pretty good at saving stuff. She has like boxes of like things that she's found that I probably would have let fall into the cracks of history.
There you go. So John, in that notebook, are you writing down lyrics, or it's just like ideas that you're going to get to later on?
Usually it's one or two lines at a time that I believe will someday become a song,
And is there do either of you, I guess, John, do you use voice memos or the memo feature, or I guess voice memos in your phone? Are those voice memos, is the app just filled with various ideas too?
Just musical mostly. I don't really record ideas for lyrics. I don't really dictate that or whatever. I just like to write it down.
A lot of songwriters tell me they have those voice memos from years, and that's just all I can think about is there's no organization to them whatsoever, and how it must be, flumming through and thinking, where's that great idea that I had? So is there any, John, go ahead and we'll go to Ian. John, is there any sense of organization to those memos on your phone?
Yeah, I go through them periodically and I'll change the title of it. I'll be like, became jump starting or something. and then I'll kind of name the file, whatever, something to make it unique so that I won't forget. And if I really like something, I'll put like a check mark emoji in the title. If I'm not so hot on something, I might put like the big black X emoji.
Yeah. How about you, Ian? Do you have any? Is there any organization? That's pretty. By the way, that's far more advanced than I usually ever hear. So any filing system is better than what I normally hear. How about you, Ian?
I don't have quite that much organization, but I do like I'll start a song and I'll like won't have a like a lyric that like kind of reads as a title yet, and then like I'll keep thinking about it throughout the day and recording another version of it. And my way of the check mark for me is like all caps. Like finally this idea this is its best form so far. But like I do the same thing as John, where I go through old ideas, and that's kind of how a lot of like the most recent songs became Gear songs, So I can probably get rid of those, but maybe I should keep them for posterity.
Do you go back? I mean, it's frightening, but I will go back to things I've written years ago and say, oh, that has legs. It didn't have legs back then, but it might actually, there may be something to that now. I mean, I'm a prose writer, not a songwriter. So do you go through maybe those ones that aren't that special, Ian, and deliberate, and maybe go, okay, this might work now, even though it didn't back then?
Definitely. I think coming at it from like having completely forgotten it was ever like briefly jotted down or briefly recorded in like between daily tasks. That's how like three of the songs on the new record of mine all kind of came to fruition that way, where they're like an idea from years ago that I was like, I don't know how to finish this right now. I'll probably never finish it, because that's often what happens. But it's been technology has been helpful in that way, where like it can bring you back to exact moment of time and space where your mind was in a completely different spot than it is now. And so, yeah, I've been able to reapproach old ideas with fresh knowledge and fresh, ears.
Do you deliberately set something aside? Like for me, I find when it's not happening, I'll deliberately set it aside, but come back maybe the next day. So do you do that often too?
Yeah. If I feel like I've gotten to the point where like I'll start overwriting or I'll start like losing the plot, then I'll be like, this is good enough to like definitely revisit at some point,
Yeah.
And so then I'll come back to it. Yeah. The following day or like sometime throughout the week.
Yeah. John, how about you? When you have those ideas and you find they're not happening, do you say, I'm going to set this aside for a day, come back to it with a fresh perspective?
I don't get rid of anything. So yeah, I still have writings and stuff from when I was a teenager that just I'll probably never do anything with it, but it's fun to go through it every now and then. If you're looking for, it could be as simple as you need an interesting word, and it's going to be more fun to go through your old writings than it is to go through a thesaurus or whatever.
Right. Hemingway said that he would always stop. I could never do this, but I'm so impressed with his discipline. Hemingway said he would stop writing at night when he knew he had something left to say, because he was terrified of starting the next day with nothing in the tank. So he'd always say, like, that's the point when you stop. So you know that the next day you got something to say. I could never do that, but that was always his way of doing it, because he was terrified, like I said, of waking up and saying, there's nothing left.
That's interesting. Yeah. I can't hold on to creative ideas overnight, they're gone in the morning. I've tried it.
Yeah. So do either of you, and Ian, we'll continue with you, get ideas? I find that songwriters get great ideas during periods of movement, whether it can be, and I'm not talking about drives, I'm talking about walking, hiking, some kind of physical activity, or they get great ideas. And I guess this is a two-part question, through monotonous activities. I've heard songwriters tell me they get ideas through a gardening or vacuuming, doing the dishes, something that requires no conscious thought, so it lets the unconscious bubble up. So yeah, both of those things. We're talking about two things: the movement or the monotony. And maybe that has gotten exacerbated. It was during COVID, because people were inside all the time and had nothing to do. But I'm curious if there's any specific moments, or if you maybe use that as a part of your process.
I think both of those are true. I like to run every day, and sometimes I'll listen to podcasts and stuff like that. But I think that like just getting from one place to another place on your own is a really good way to like work out some thoughts and like kind of take a journey with yourself to from just so I think movement's really important in that. I think like it just going from point A to point B is really helpful to like have a different perspective on some things when you get to the end of it. And definitely dishes and stuff. And I think that relates back to being a parent. It's like when you're have a dedicated task to do something and it has to be done, there's no excuse, then like you have to be with your own thoughts for a while. Then I think that's a pretty fruitful place to go.
The novelist Agatha Christie said the best time to plan a book is when you're doing the dishes.
There you go.
So now real quick, I've written about this because I'm a big runner too. I wrote about this in the Washington Post. There's a very clear link between exercise and higher order thinking, creativity. What they found, and this has all been replicated in the lab, so this is not like snake oil science. And I use absolutely use physical activity as a part of my process. Like when I'm in a rut, I go out and I go for a run, and those ideas shake themselves out. But anyway, so what they did was in these studies was they put people on a treadmill for 20 minutes at 60% max heart rate, which is not much more than a moderate walk, and then give them a battery of tests afterwards. And those people always scored higher than people who didn't exercise. There's a chemical in the brain called brain-derived neurotrophic factor that gets secreted just through increased blood flow, which is exercise. Mm-hmm. So, and it's fascinating stuff. And it kind of makes sense, right? I mean, especially for kind of office people, but any kind of creative type. So the sweet spot is 30 minutes at 60%. Now, the good news is it's not dose responsive. So 60 minutes isn't twice as good as 30 and 90% isn't better than 60%. But it's got to be something that doesn't require a lot of brain power. Mm-hmm. So the effect gets negated if you are like listening to podcasts, unless it's like, the Always Sunny podcast, maybe, where it doesn't require that kind of intellectual depth, as good as it is. Yeah. But it's fascinating stuff. So there's a reason why that happens when you're exercising, when you get those great ideas.
You're talking to two guys who like to go to the gym together on tour. So 30 minutes.
Do you really? Yeah. Do you really? That's hilarious. So 30 minutes. So
we're the gym rats.
So, and it's funny because also they found that treadmills aren't as good as ellipticals because in a treadmill, there's a little bit of balance involved.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so and back when they did the study and remember Wii Fit, is that, I don't think they still have it. It was that, those games you would play that they found that Wii Fit, that in effect is negated with Wii Fit because there's something cognitive going on as you're playing the game. So, needless to say, as a parent, I mean, these things have enormous implications for kids too. Like as a parent, it drives me crazy that kids aren't, that we're taking recess out.
That's strange.
Yeah. Anyway, John, so do you use that as a part of your process, or do you find you've gotten ideas in those situations?
Well, I usually ride the recumbent bike in the gym for 30 minutes, and I probably go for a higher heart rate than that. I'm like riding it at maximum resistance for 30 minutes like a maniac. So I don't know if it's ever helped me creatively, but it's certainly helped me get over a hangover,
Well, it's not that it's not bad. It's just you don't have to go that fast. It's not that it's detrimental, but so what I forgot to say was that the effect lasts about 90 minutes post-exercise. So it's not during, it's afterwards when you're at your most effective.
It makes sense. I feel like I'm the happiest after I do some exercise.
Yeah.
For about an hour or two.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally, it's fascinating stuff. And I've, like I said, written about it because I thought, wow, there seems to be a connection here. So John, how about you during those have you gotten song ideas during monotonous activities that require, no power, no brain power whatsoever?
Well, the laundry room is my favorite room in my house. So yeah,
the laundry room. Nice.
A lot of laundry to do in my household. So I'm sure that has helped me the past few years as as the piles of laundry grew higher and higher. Um, we just put out this great new record. I mean, I think maybe one does have to do with the other.
And listen, you're in good company. I interviewed Kebmo a couple of years ago, and he told me that he gets ideas while folding laundry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's rhythmic too. So it's kind of, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've heard people. I'm doing this and vacuuming, but I've heard people say that there's something about the sound of the vacuum, and but even externally too, I've heard things like turn signals when people are driving, car alarms. What's that story? Go ahead.
I was going to say about turn signals. I typically don't listen to music when I drive, and when I hit a turn signal, I'll start drumming on the steering wheel, and then I'm just making shit up in my head for the rest of the drive, thanks to the turn signal.
Didn't they say that's how Jive Talking by the Bee Gees got started? Wasn't it over that they were going over bumps in a highway or something, right?
Is that true? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it is. That's what I've heard. That's not as far as I've heard that before. So
I feel like it had to. It had to happen at some point in time, you know?
Right. All right. So John, we'll stick with you then. How important is the ritual? A ritual is important to me. Like I write in one chair, I revise in another. Because when it comes to at least the revision process for me, I need to get as far away from the writing process as possible. The closer I'm to the writing process, I think I'm more likely to miss things. But that's a part of my ritual. Time of day, I know I'm more effective at a certain time of day. Certain things I have to have with me. So, John, how important is that to you as far as when you having a ritual at all?
I wouldn't say I have much of a ritual. I just kind of, when I'm working on a song, I suppose I kind of rewrite the same parts over and over again. So I'm writing and revising at the same time. And I don't worry about how long a song might take. Sometimes a 4-minute song can take 10 years to write. And sometimes, you can write a longer song with way more lyrics in an hour. I guess the only thing that my only goal is there's just something I could feel when the song is done,
Yeah. So going back to the environment, does that matter at all? Like, do you have a room in the house or anywhere, or do you feel like that's too inhibiting and it's important to be flexible?
No, I mean, I have like a studio at my house, but it's not, I don't have to be there to work on a song. I prefer, sometimes I'll just take my guitar and my notebook into the kitchen and, pour a glass of whiskey and sit there, till 2 a.m. Because I want to be in the kitchen,
Yeah.
I don't want to be in the studio. But
yeah.
Why would I want to write a song in the studio when I could write this song in the kitchen?
But isn't that, I think it's important, at least for me, it's important to know that, like there are certain places that I'm more effective and that I'm not as effective, like certain rooms in the house where I just don't write. And there's somewhere I feel like, yeah, it's happened here before. Yeah. And at least whether it's true or not, at least, whether it's superstition or whatever, it's at least confidence knowing that it's happened before here, it might happen again. So maybe that kitchen has that value for you.
There's a couple places in the house that I like to go sit and write. The floor in the living room, for some reason, there's a lot of places to sit, but I just sit on the floor. It's a nice spot.
So I only bring these things up because when people say things, I feel like, oh, other songwriters have said those things. But Britt Daniel, I interviewed him a couple of years ago, and he said that he writes on the floor for one specific reason. When he started writing songs, he couldn't afford a couch. And so he'd sit on the floor, and he still writes on the floor next to his couch because it gives him that connection that he doesn't have. And I thought that was so interesting. I mean,
well, yeah, all the first few apartments I lived in, I never had any furniture. So maybe that's something held over from that time in my life.
I think it totally is. I mean, you're not thinking about it consciously, but at some point it just becomes, this is where I've always done it. And even though might not be thinking about it.
I do have a nice soft rug now, though.
See, that's
to be right on the hardwood floor, you know.
So you've given yourself the luxury of a rug at least to write on. I want to get back to something you said about revising, but Ian, I want to ask that same question of you. I mean, that environment, whether it's room or anything like that, is that ritual important to you?
I think there's something to what John's talking about when he's talking about the kitchen. I think there's something about like where the kitchen is just like the main energy source of a home, you know what I mean? And the main energy source of like the people in that home. And so I think there's something, it's like whenever we hang out with our friends, it's in the kitchen. So I think that like just a lot of life is lived in the kitchen. So the kitchen, it always works for me as well. I'll stick with that answer too.
Okay, but I'm going to press you on it. So
sure.
The kitchen table, or do you have like an island? I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but I feel like we have those places.
He has got a freaking piano in his kitchen.
I do. I have a piano in my kitchen, so that helps. There's nowhere else it can go in the whole house. We've tried. it's staying there. I stand when I write, and I stand like I kind of like pace. And so like I have a kitchen island that like I'll have my notebook on it, and I'll be like just kind of holding my guitar and walking around, pacing around, and then coming back to write down some ideas.
I like that. Yeah, maybe even the pacing, the rhythm of the pace.
Definitely matters.
Yeah. Okay, so John, you said you revise as you write. So here's what's interesting, that any prose writer will say that's the last thing you should be doing is revising as you write, you know, like because it kills your momentum as a thinker. And I'm talking about if, like, I would never have told my students, you know, some of my students would say they can't write line 2 until line 1 is done. And when a prose piece where there's more of a connection, that's the kiss of death, because you end up really just, it crushes your momentum as an idea generator. But that's prose writing and not songwriter. So when you revise as you write, or you're doing it line by line, verse by verse, how small are you getting in the weeds on that idea?
I kind of go until I run out of steam. And then I'm like, all right, I'm not going to get the rest of this now. So what did I do? And what's cool about it? What can change? What maybe I can separate one idea and kind of clone it into another verse of some sort. Just, I guess, I just don't want to be done. I don't want to have to wait to write the rest. I don't know. So maybe it's just impatience, but when I feel like I'm onto something, I want to get the parts that I have as close to their final form as possible, I guess.
I find that I revise as I write. You mentioned this, but I think as when I find I'm running out of steam, if I go back like a paragraph or two and I revise a couple of paragraphs before that, when I get to that paragraph where I ran out of steam, it's almost like a slingshot. I find that it like propels me into that paragraph.
Yeah.
So I find that works for me.
I think there's something to what you're saying about like revising or like exploring something earlier in the song or the prose piece or whatever. And then sometimes it'll just inspire me to be like, oh, that's like, and then it's like, now I know where to go in the 4th verse or whatever.
Yeah.
Or now I know that the 4th verse is the last verse and it needs to have some related conclusion to the first verse. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's like putting together like a collage sometimes of what can go where. And sometimes, you know, it doesn't have to be linear, but like it's nice when you can find some continuity throughout the verses and stuff like that.
Yeah, as a prose writer, I'm not a linear writer at all. Like I feel like I just start writing wherever the hell I have the most to say. And I find that momentum keeps me going. I think as a prose writer, the worst thing you can do is say, oh, I've got all those ideas down there, but I can't say them yet because I haven't written the beginning yet. And I just don't think as a writer, at least, I have no right knowing what that thing's supposed to look like at the end. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about, like making it not like being non-linear gives you more flexibility, right?
Yeah, totally. It is like kind of a puzzle, and then like I think it's at least for me, I feel lucky if I've gotten to a point where there's some kind of arc within a song. I feel like I push through to the other side of something interesting, and like kind of that's like a for me at least it's a tall order to make something that makes complete sense. You know?
Right.
Um,
All
yeah.
right, I'm going to read you a quote. I'm going to read you some quotes from writers, and I want both of you to respond. This is my favorite quote. This is one that blows songwriters away. John, I'll start with you. This is from the novelist E.L. Doctorow. He says, writing is like driving at night in the fog. You can only see as far as the headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way. I love that, right? So I'll repeat it. Writing
Sure.
is like driving at night in the fog. You can only see as far as the headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way. So, John, thoughts on that as a songwriter? Do you feel like it's better to know where you're going or just to kind of, go inch by inch and then make the whole trip that way?
Songwriting to me can really be done. I mean, there's so many different ways to do it, but the two that I rely on the most is kind of just like you say, like inch by inch. And that's probably how I write a little bit more than half of my material. And then maybe the rest of it is I kind of have it kind of written in my head. And then I'm kind of, as I'm writing it and revising it, it's kind of because I know where it's going to go. I'm just having trouble compressing it down into a song,
Yeah.
I try nowadays to be really economical with my words and word choices. And yeah, I guess that's my biggest challenge is trying to paint you an entire picture with, 5 or 6 syllables,
Yeah. So the shorter the word, the better, right?
I think so. I think simple language can be far more effective. I mean, in songwriting, if you just look at everything Hank Williams wrote, and he's kind of the gold standard for songwriting.
Yeah. All right, Ian, how about you? I'll repeat it. Writing is like driving at night in the fog. You can only see as far as the headlights, but you can make the whole trip that way.
Sometimes the headlights aren't even on, Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. And then sometimes you need to, stop and get out of the vehicle for a couple months and get back in. But no, I think that's pretty apt. I think that's a good way of putting it. It's like you're kind of just making this like slog, but at the other end of that tunnel is really it's a lot of euphoria and a lot of dopamine from finishing an idea, even however much of a slog in the fog as it is. But yeah, that's a good one.
I know it's not a good one. It's funny. I didn't mention this earlier, but I find that if I finish something in the morning and then come back 12 hours later, the writing is still too precious to me. And I have a hard time cutting stuff. But I find that if I finish something at night, wake up and go to sleep, wake up the next morning, I can cut stuff like it's nobody's business. There's something about sleep that I wake up the next morning and it's no problem cutting stuff. I don't know what that is, if it's a sleep thing, but that's absolutely part of my process. And it's like, I know that these things are hard to let go of now, but when I wake up in the morning, I have no problem getting rid of that stuff.
I think you gain confidence too. You know what I mean? There's something about being confident enough to know that you can like cut some precious elements to like make one stronger, bigger picture,
Yeah.
And there might be something about sleep, but it's definitely just like time too. I feel like it's just maybe it's because you haven't spent your whole entire day like with it in the back of your mind obsessing over it while you're doing everything else that you have to do. So you're just literally woke up with a fresh palette, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I feel like even if during the day, even if I'm not thinking about it, it's doing something back there.
Yeah, it's always there.
Yeah, it's always there. And that's also what I would tell my students, that when they would get anxious about the process, I would say, your writing process is always taking place. If you ever think about the writing process as just taking place while you're writing, you're done. But it's taking place while you're eating, sleeping, working out, walking. And that is kind of much more, makes it much easier to, I think, just to understand, rather than like, oh my gosh, I'm not writing now. What am I doing? Yes, you are writing. Something's going on up there, even though you don't know it.
Yeah, that's the creative process. It's living,
Yeah. Yeah. All right. One more quote. John, this is Allen Ginsberg, the poet. To gain your own voice, you have to forget about having it heard. So maybe that's having no self-consciousness when it comes to your voice. So to gain your own voice, you have to forget about having it heard. How important is that as a songwriter?
Have you heard my voice?
I have, yes. I guess we're talking literal voice. I was talking more metaphorical.
I think that's really the only way you can write and be true to yourself, is if you're just doing it for you. You're not worrying about how other people are going to see you or interpret your work, or it's not I don't know, to me, like, I'm writing because I love to do it, not because I need critical praise or something. I mean, it's really cool to have an audience captivated by your work and singing along and stuff, and that's definitely a big part of it too. But if I would probably still just be writing songs anyway if I didn't have this this band and this touring lifestyle and concerts and all that stuff. I'd be writing songs anyway.
Yeah. Ian, how about you then? Is I guess what's the opposite of self-conscious? Unself-conscious? I don't know, whatever that would be, but is that important? I guess that's an important element to have as a songwriter, right?
Yeah, I think you need to. I don't think there's room for other people or expectations when you enter like the true dream state of like writing a song that you're really proud of. You know what I mean? I feel like you can't ever get to that state of mind if you're thinking about expectation. And I often think, when you're thinking about expectation and critical praise, then you're probably going to tend to try to ape somebody else's work that's had that critical praise. So I think if you're talking about finding your own metaphorical voice in your own perspective, then I think it's important to be able to let go of the reality of this as a career or something,
Yeah. All right, last question. So I do find that songwriters are pretty voracious readers. So I'm curious, Ian, we'll continue with you and then to John. Do you like to read? If you do, who do you like to read? Who are some of your favorite authors? Maybe even other. I mean, I'm again, not to invoke Hemingway. Hemingway said all writers should go to art galleries. But I'm curious, talk about reading and maybe other art in general, how much of that is a part of your life.
Reading is a huge part of my life. And that's one of my favorite parts about going on tour and getting away from the family, though I love them deeply, is that I have a lot
I'll edit that part out, by the way.
Thank you. She's never listened to this anyway. No, I love it. I've read 3 books so far in this tour. I'm on my 3rd book, but I read that Philosophy of Modern Song by Bob Dylan, which is like a fun read. And then I'm kind of into some like nonfiction right now. I read that book by Warren Zanes about Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska, which is really amazing. And I'm in the middle of that Double in the White City book. Which
is that really Larson? Good. Wait,
yeah,
is that Eric Larson? Yeah.
But for fiction, and I think fiction actually is really what loosens up my mind to be creative with words. As I'm just always been a huge Raymond Carver fan, and reading George Saunders currently, of course,
Yeah. Raymond Carver always comes up with songwriters.
I think it's the economical aspect. It's like short stories and songs have a relationship to me. And I think his economy with his words probably has an appeal to songwriters who are trying to simplify themselves.
Raymond Carver. Here are the big four: Raymond Carver, Bukowski, McCarthy, and Kurt Vonnegut. If I could say those are the four most common, it's those four.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I've got another one for you if you like that economy. And I was turned on to this writer by a couple of songwriters, Breece DJ Pancake. So Breece, So Breece, Breece, D''J, and then Pancake is in the food. So here's the deal. He's called the Hillbilly Hemingway. He wrote one book, and there was an article about him in the New Yorker a few years ago. He was apparently heralded as the greatest, and this was, I think, in the 80s. He was going to be the greatest, the next great American short story writer. He wrote one book of short stories and then committed suicide when he was like 25. Wow. But he grew up in the Appalachians. So it's that Hemingway-esque type of writing, but from Appalachia.
Beautiful.
And I was turned on to him by some songwriters, and enough mentioned him, and I said, I got to read this guy. It's amazing.
Into it.
Yeah. So, John, how about you?
I'm a big nonfiction fan, and specifically crime and crime journalism. TJ English is one of my favorite crime journalists. Currently reading 2 nonfiction books. I got the I don't want to mess up his any names here. Oh, I left him on the bus. Is it Mark Lewison? That's his name. This insanely detailed account of the Beatles' first 4 years as a band. It's called Volume 1, All These Years, or something along those lines. It's apparently the first of a trilogy. It's an exhaustive read, but if you're into the subject matter, it's easily digestible. And I have to look up the author's name of this book, Black Girl from Pyongyang, In Search of My Identity, by Monica Macias. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Macias. She was basically grew up in North Korea under the care of Kim Il-sung, after her father, who was the leader of a nation in Africa, was assassinated in a coup. So it's a pretty wild story.
Have you read Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann?
No, not yet, but it's been recommended big time by my buddy Key, who and I know they're turning that into a movie. And,
it's been it premiered at Cannes Film Festival. It got rave reviews. And he's an amazing writer, but that book's fantastic.
Cinema is another medium that is kind of helps me be creative too. I love going to the movies, and I used to be a projectionist, and I'm all about that experience. So
do you feel like those ideas wash over you kind of, subconsciously, or do you feel like that's, not that you're going to go there and say, I'm going to get some ideas, but is it hard to watch a movie, just watch it for the value, but also thinking about, maybe, I may get some ideas from this? Is it hard to do both of those at the same time, I guess?
I try to just be an observer and a consumer of the of the medium, but yeah, sometimes it can be a little distracting if I'm like, there's a song in there, I mean, I wrote my song Baltimore Blues after watching Goodfellas for the probably 100th time, but I was like, I found the song in Goodfellas.
And that's it. Thanks for listening. My name is Benno Papari, And this is Songwriters on Podcast. Don't forget, you can find me on Twitter at Song Process, at Instagram at Songwriters on Process. There is a YouTube channel. I stopped posting videos a couple of years ago, but there's a lot of them out there, some good ones too. And I'd love to hear from you. Ben at songwritersonprocess.com. Email me. I'd love your suggestions, complaints, comments, anything like that. And don't forget, the site goes all the way back to 2010. If you go to songwritersonprocess.com, there's about 200 interviews with songwriters, but they're all transcribed. The podcast is new, but the site is about 13 years old with all those interviews. There's about, with including the podcast, about 300 total. So check them out. And I am out. Have a good one, everyone.